Hey, Eli, how you doing?
Congressman, I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Uh, you ready to go? We hanging out?
I'm good to
Just
go.
comfortable?
I'm all set.
Hey, let's see where to start. Not surprised at your vote. I think you've been pretty clear about this. The entire time, the last month we've been going through all this stuff. What was it like yesterday? Was there any inclination on your part to accept this deal just to kind of, obviously you can say, we made permanent these tax increases for most Americans. I know the spending thing is still sort of an outlying concern that didn't get addressed, but given the sort of calamity, right, of going off this fiscal cliff, I mean, was there ever a temptation to kind of, put your swords down, join the speaker, and just say, we've got to get this done, and we should all vote together as a caucus to do this, and we can come back later? Or was there ever a temptation to do it for the sort of larger political ramifications or economic ramifications, or was this just never something you could get on board with?
I think the real danger that this country faces is a catastrophic debt depression. What this country has as a result of $16 trillion in debt, yearly deficits that exceed $1 trillion, is yet another bill with no clear way to actually cut spending and get this country back on sound financial footing. The bill presented by the Senate actually gives the government more money. It actually results in more money being taken away from small businesses, from families. 77% of American households will have their taxes increase as a result. The bottom line is this. Our country must get spending under control. We must tackle our deficit problem, and only then will we be able to pull ourselves away from the very real threat of a debt depression.
The 77% number, what are you referring to?
That's the payroll tax.
The payroll tax. Are you advocating that should have been extended? I mean,
yeah. No, I'm simply pointing out that every American is going to feel every working American is going to feel the burden of this bill.
But I mean, should the payroll tax have been extended?
I actually think that in terms of the payroll tax extension, one of the things that we've got to address in this country is how we have meaningful entitlement reform, and that's a part of the discussion.
Mm-hmm. When you, I don't know, when you think about the next fight, I spoke with Congressman Kaufman earlier, and he was maybe a little more on the fence about this bill and had less sort of macro concerns. Ended up voting no anyway. But one of the things he said is, I mean, everybody shares the concern that you mentioned about the deficit reduction. I mean, even Senator Bennett. Mm-hmm. By the way, what did you think of Bennett's vote?
Well, I think Senator Bennett finds himself in a position as the chief partisan of the United States Senate. He's the head Democrat recruited to take out Republicans. He needs to find a way to appear to Colorado like he's maintaining some level of independence while he tries to defeat Republicans in the 2014 midterm. And so I think at an 89-8 vote, he had a chance to try to show people in Colorado that he's going to vote not always with leadership.
Just to show a little bit of a contrarian streak.
Well, I think that's a real challenge that he faces in terms of trying to remain independent while being the chief partisan in the Democratic majority.
Getting back to just the larger concern about deficit reduction and the fight ahead, Congressman Kaufman said, if you think this was a fight, you haven't seen anything yet, because when we come back, we are very serious about entitlement reform and serious cuts, and the president says we'll work on them, et cetera, et cetera. But the Republicans are talking about obviously using the debt ceiling deal for leverage. Obama says that's not going to happen. I don't know how he thinks that's not going to happen. But what are you anticipating, early on in the next Congress when it comes to working out some of these sequestration cuts and achieving the kind of real deficit reduction entitlement reform that you think is so important?
Well, this country doesn't have 10 years to survive heading the current direction that it is. We don't have 5 years. We've got to address this big problem of debt overspending in the next Congress, the 113th Congress, these 2 years. We don't have that much time. The president campaigned on making sure that taxes increased on millionaires and billionaires. The president got his way. The president got every tax that he wanted. He's now taxing millionaires and billionaires. And now the real work of addressing the overspending by this government must begin. We're borrowing over 40 cents of every dollar that we spend. Every American's share of the federal debt is about $52,000 per man, woman, and child. That's unsustainable, and not only that, it's immoral to pass that kind of debt on to future generations. We have a spending-driven debt crisis in this country. This bill didn't address it. We should stop worrying about job-killing tax increases. We need to start worrying about job-killing tax increases and stop worrying about the president simply trying to play politics and actually get to work.
The caucus meetings, I know you've had many of them over the last couple of weeks, and it sounds like some were maybe a little more strained and fraught with sort of division than others. Can you just sort of describe the situation? I know that most people, I don't know that it's as simple as are you a Boehner guy or are you a Cantor guy. I guess if that's a real question, I would say that Cory Gardner is more of a Cantor guy. But are we making too much of a possible rift between the more moderate members aligning behind the speaker and the members like yourself who just will not budge on anything related to the debt and are going to demand serious debt reduction above, as sort of job number one? Is that a real thing, or are we sort of reading too much into the sort of fissures that we see when we look at vote counts and statements on cable TV, et cetera?
Yeah, well, I think not everybody's going to be on the same sentence of every page, but the bottom line is the Republican conference is on the same page. They may be reading different sentences in a different way, but the fact is we agree with the same goal of getting our economy back on track, of growing our economy, of reducing our debt and deficits, making sure that we have comprehensive pro-growth tax reform over the next 2 years that we can accomplish to get people back to work. There's no schism, there's no daylight between Speaker Boehner and Leader Cantor. The fact is this conference isn't always going to agree with the placement of every comma and every period in every sentence. But we do agree that this president is heading this country in the wrong direction, that the majority in the Senate has failed to pass a budget for the past 3.5 years, and that this nation deserves better from the men and women in Congress that represent it.
Going forward, it sounds like, I know that some people, whether it was Chris Christie or Peter King, there were a lot of Hurricane Sandy folks who were pretty angry with the speaker last night and this morning. It seems like that's been sort of patched up. It was certainly fodder for us for a couple hours to be like, oh my God, Speaker Boehner is just, wants to be the guy on the Southwest commercial who wants to get away. But, when you think about it, Mike Coffman told me there was a caucus meeting a day or two ago where the speaker said, I'm not going to keep going to the White House and ask you guys to agree to whatever deal that I worked out with Majority Leader Reid and President Obama. I'm gonna, we're gonna do this more from the other end. Did he say that? What's your take on the speaker sort of if he said that and if he's changing his sort of tune to allow members a little more empowerment and a little more influence on the big deals that get done rather than just having two people drive the bus?
Well, I think the Speaker of the House has recognized that after 2 years of trying to go to the White House to work out a plan, a bargain that's good for the American people, the President simply hasn't been interested. He's changed the goalpost, he's moved the objectives, he turns around and demands more revenue, and so it's really become futile in terms of the Speaker's ability to work out an agreement with the President. That's why you saw Mitch McConnell and the Vice President actually work out something, bypassing the President, bypassing Leader Reid. And so I think what the Speaker is simply saying is, look, we're the United States Congress, the House and the Senate, a separate legislative body. What we're going to do from now on is work our plans, work our negotiations between the two chambers, and working out with Harry Reid, working out with John Boehner, Leader Cantor, and then telling the White House, hey, you know what? This is the legislative idea. We're the legislative branch. You, the executive, can come in, comment, and help craft a deal. But no longer is it going to be the case where the Congress comes hat in hand to the White House, because that simply will not work.
And maybe that process is sort of accentuating or over dramatizing the sort of divisions that exist in any caucus. Because I guess when you come back to the House Republicans and you tell some 200 plus people, here's what you have to do, there's going to be division over that rather than something that a lot of people might have had their hands in crafting and getting to the point where it's on the floor for a vote.
Look, I grew up with an older sister, and we disagreed on everything. There's 235 people in Congress that oftentimes have those same kind of disagreements and differences of opinion. But the bottom line is they all agree, and that's not just the 235 members of the Republican Conference. That's the 435 members of the U.S. Congress who truly do have the best interest of this country in their hearts and in their actions. But they're expressed in different ways, and they're carried out, quite frankly, through different policies. But that's what makes this country so strong, is the differences of ideas and opinions that we get to discuss, debate every day. It's when those discussions and deliberations break down and prevent any ideas from actually moving forward that creates the problem.
I got a nice press release today, not surprisingly, from Mark Udall about the extension of the wind PTC, but I haven't gotten one from Rachel yet. Is she working on it, or?
Well, I have said that I support the wind production tax credit in terms of its extension and ramping it down and paying for it. This bill fails to pay for it. In fact, the added cost to the deficit as a result of the extension without paying for it is about $12 billion over 10 years.
Mm-hmm. So you still support it, and we've talked about this. I know it's a tough issue politically, and I know it's something that you just think needs to be paid for and ramped down.
Right. And I think industry understands it needs to be ramped down. In fact, they submitted a proposal to the House Ways and Means Committee to ramp it down. That's going to be the key point of discussion over the next year. But again, I just simply think adding $12 billion of new spending to the deficit was the wrong direction.
End of the day, I know that the country probably wants, some negotiations from Congress that maybe don't come down to the very last second. Do you think that's a reasonable goal, or do you think that, look, you guys control the House, they control the Senate, and given the deep divisions in the country, that there are going to be some fights. That's just kind of how it is.
Look, if Apple decided to release an iPhone 6 tomorrow without putting any thought into it, there'd be a major problem. And so Congress knows when these deadlines are. Congress sees that it's got a challenge ahead of it in a year or in 9 months, and it needs to get its job done sooner rather than later. Waiting to the last minute, the last hour, the last second of the day, it's not good for the economy. It certainly doesn't give the American people the kind of confidence that they need in their government to make consumer choices of spending, investing. And Congress, over the next year, had better get its act together. The American people are going to have a lot to say come 2014.
And where are you going to be in 2014?
2014, I'm going to be working hard, making sure we're getting this economy back in order.
All right, man. I love talking to you. I appreciate the time.
Hey, Eli, thanks.
Thank you for sitting in the chair, and I'll look forward to getting this clip from your staff soon. And we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Thanks a lot.
Out in D.C. or maybe back here, too.
Hey, look forward to it. Come on out here anytime.
All right, man. Happy
Thanks.
New Year.
Happy New Year. Bye.
Okay.